Why did God choose a people? Are we all children of God after all? Why did God choose a people? He chose people to show that God is choosing people according to a certain principle. And he chose Abraham because of his faith. He chose Jacob because of his faith. He chose Isaac because of faith. To honor the faith, traces why is David from whom the Messiah comes, because of David's faith. Faith. Why was it David and not Saul? Because of faith. Why was it David and not Jonathan? Because of David's faith. And David's knowledge and understanding of who Yehovah is. Why is the name of Yehovah so important today to me, particularly? Why I emphasize that so much? Because what the name means. Everybody is really obsessed with names and nameism, and my name means this, and it's really important to people, but it's really important to people for a reason, and it mainly has to do with what the names mean, because there is that ties back into what I'm saying about spirit and spirituality and spiritual things, is because the name is a spiritual thing. You are deriving your being as a person from this word that has a spiritual power behind it, And that's where the whole magic and magic spells comes into play, and occult, because when we shift gears here, we're going to talk about, modern Satanism. Where does it come from? Why is there Satanism? And, what is it really? What is it in substance and reality? And so with that, we can now shift gears over to this video. Listen to what he has to say.
Getting back to Satan. Satan means enmity. We have another use of the word Sitna, which appears in a much later period, and that is in Ezra 4:6. And Ezra 4:6, in the reign of Achashverosh, at the start of his reign, they drew up a Sitna against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. These are the enemies of Israel. They don't want the Jews to rebuild the temple, so they draw up, and it says, Katvu Sitna. They wrote a Sitna. Sitna is a letter of enmity, but it may also at this point have taken on the meaning of accusation, or that might be part of the connotation here. Meaning, because the letter wasn't just a letter from an enemy, it was saying, hey, these guys, you can't let them build the temple, they'll rebel against you. So there's a connotation here of accusation, and that was, the rabbis ran with that to the point where they talk about Satan. Satan they refer to as kategor. That is the prosecuting attorney. And it literally is the term for a prosecutor, right? There's the defense attorney and there's a prosecutor. And so in rabbinical thought, Satan is not just the enemy, which he is, and an adversary, which he is, but he's also the prosecutor standing before God and doing kind of what he did in the story of Job, saying, well, okay, he serves you, but you only did good to him. Now harm him and see what happens. But kategor, that is, it's actually a Greek word, kategor. It's the Greek word for a prosecutor. It's like you would say in America, the district attorney. The kategor, the enemy, is this almost like God is, not almost like, God is standing, or God is sitting on his throne, and there's two different angels before him. There's the prosecutor, and then the accuser, that is, and then there's the defense attorney. And we actually have that in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1. And there, Joshua the high priest, or Yehoshua. Then he showed Yehoshua the high priest standing before the Malach Yehovah, the angel of Yehovah, and Satan standing at his right hand as an enemy against him, as a Satan against him, which might mean as an accuser against him. Right? So the JPS and the NIV both translate to accuse him. That is a possibility here, that it means enemy, but it also means accuser. And in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, we're not seeing it in the sense of accuser. I think we're seeing it in the sense of he's coming to do the test, similar to what we saw in 1 Chronicles 21. But there is that understanding in Judaism, and it comes from this place in the Tanakh, that Satan is not only an enemy, he can also be an accuser, just as we have a letter of accusation by the enemies of Israel. In Zechariah 3:2, it goes on, it says, Yehovah said to Satan, Yehovah rebuke you, Satan. Yehovah has chosen Jerusalem. Rebuke you. Is not this man a burning stick snatched from the fire? And the image we have there is that Satan comes as the accuser, as the enemy, to say, hey, you've got to punish Jerusalem. And who stands in Israel's defense? Yehovah does.
Amen.
There's no intercessor there. There's no intermediary. Yehovah stands up and he says, I rebuke you, Satan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're accusing, I'm going to defend Israel. The judge himself defends Israel.
So there you go. That's, that's kind of our founding element here of like when we think about Satan, we want to hold on to, I think we've really been trained to understand Satan as being this one person's one character in a story, some mythological figure with horns and I don't really think that's even, a Christian sentiment. I don't think it's really a popular idea even in the world of Christianity. I think people come to really, even the people that are the most vehement, like, get thee behind me, Satan, like they're really Satan warriors. They're going to get out there and get Satan, that dude with his pitchfork and tail and everything. Even they, the way they treat it, the way they understand it, they're not looking for some guy wearing a red costume and he's got a mustache and stuff, as what is depicted often in like by Anton LaVey and other Satanists, that he's, like, ooh, they're going to go out there and they're going to spook all the Christians because there's the guy, he's wearing the costume. And even Christians don't understand that, that human beings are human beings and Satan is a spiritual possessor of human beings. So, but that's where, that's Satan, that's the word Satan and how we understand that. So but I want to now go to this guy, Tim Mackie, really popular. They got 1,080,000 views on this one about Satan. Tim Mackie and the BibleProject. Let's see what he has to say.
Variety of images. Another title in the New Testament is the devil, which is just the Greek word for the slanderer. This is actually fascinating. The devil is the Greek word diabolos, and Paul uses the word diabolos to describe men and women who spread gossip in a local church. So the devil isn't the only devil. Humans can play that role too.
Yeah.
So it's a title.
It's a title. It's a way to describe someone.
So, however, and we'll talk about this Satan, I think, in another question. But Lucifer has come to be a pretty
popular
name. So here's what's fascinating about Lucifer. Lucifer occurs nowhere in the Hebrew or Greek Bible.
Okay. It's not in the Bible.
Period.
As a name.
Correct. Yeah. In Isaiah chapter 14, we're back to Isaiah 14. Isaiah describes the ruler of Babylon, which I think is meant to refer both to the human and spiritual ruler behind icon of Babylon.
Yeah.
The actual king of Babylon,
the
but then also
Correct.
the dominion he's under by some
That's the ancient
spiritual
way people understood these things. These
behind
spiritual
Babylon. So Isaiah goes
powers
into
of the
this
gods
poem to talk about
that
how
reinforce their physical
the ruler of Babylon
power.
was like the morning star. In Hebrew, he says, it's the phrase, Helel ben Shachar, or the shining one, the son of the dawn.
Yeah.
This is brilliant on Isaiah's part. Isaiah
This is Jupiter, right?
Venus.
Or Venus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's tapping into, astronomical phenomenon.
Yeah.
Of the last star that hangs on
Yeah, the brightest star.
from the sunrise.
Yeah.
The one that hangs on the longest as the sun rises. So, we call it Venus today. It's had lots of names, that planet has. But it's developed a lot of stories and mythologies in many cultures about the star that hangs on to, like, in rebellion against the sun. Like, I can outlast
The last
you.
stand.
Yeah, totally, the last stand. In Canaanite mythology, that figure is called Helel ben Shachar, the son of the dawn, the shining one. So what Isaiah is doing is he's actually tapping into a well-known story in Canaanite culture, and but he's also adapting it in light of the Genesis 3 story of the arch rebel who wants to ascend to God's throne and rule in God's place.
Yeah.
That's where the pyramid.
Not under God's authority, but as a God. So that's Isaiah 14. In about the third, somewhere in the 2nd to 3rd centuries AD. Okay, we're fast forwarding in time.
Okay.
Like a long time, 1,000 years. So after Jesus, 200-ish or 300 years, the Hebrew Bible and Greek Bible are being translated into Latin.
Yeah.
So Latin was one of the main languages spoken in the Roman Empire. And so when Latin translators, one of the most famous of which was a guy named Jerome, was translating Isaiah 14, who translated that phrase, Hallel ben Shachar, with the Latin word Luciferas, which means Venus, the morning star.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what that word.
That's right. So, and then in later church history, as Isaiah 14 got associated with Satan, that Latin word somehow became a proper name.
Got it.
So anyway, so
there you go. So there's where Lucifer is tied to the Satan, the enemy, who rises in rebellion against the judge, ruler, proper authority of the heavens and the earth. Spiritually, I was there. These are big Bible ideas, okay? So, really important to tie the words together because, you know, when we're talking about Christian, fast forward to where we are today, we have Anton LaVey. We don't need to, I mean, I'll let you do your own, like, kind of Google, whatever, research on that, Wikipedia or whatever. You have this dude who has a history in the magic and the arts and stuff, but who is he? Is he is he a jaded Christian that really believes in God and believes in Satan, believes in his character, stuff like that? I think the answer would be no. Generally, here's the, I'm going to give it to you now, because I don't have necessarily this laid out in any specific platform, but one of the most important things that I think people have to understand is where Satanism now, Satanism is joined with atheism in that it doesn't believe in a God. These are not, there's theistic Satanism that, a lot of people will talk to, but by and large, theistic Satanism doesn't even show up on the map when it comes to Satanism. First off, it's really small group of people who are atheists. Satanists. Atheism obviously is bigger. Most people, I would say, without seeing the statistics, I would assume most people are kind of in this hazy middle of not being completely unbelieving, but also not really buying into much of the theological allegory or definitely not the mythicism of the Bible and Western religion as it is, as it were. But atheism, carte blanche, just non-believing people that don't believe any of this stuff, but they don't even entertain certain esoteric, mystical principles of the knowledge of the ancients, right? That's where Satanism comes in. Anton LaVey being a magician under the discipleship, although I don't think he worked directly with Aleister Crowley or anything, but he definitely was influenced by Aleister Crowley and his teaching. And the world of the occult and the magical. And where do these things come from? Well, just like as Christianity has this ongoing thread of tradition that traces all the way back to Jesus, whether real or invented, that tradition follows a definite thread back to the ancients, and it derives its authority from coming from the original sources. We have the horse's mouth, right? You want to listen to anybody, you should listen to us, because we have that continuing thread of people who believed, but not only believed, but they were discipled in the teaching and the tradition of the elders and the saints of who were directly taught by Jesus of Nazareth, who then taught Peter, who then taught so and so and so and so, allegedly down through Roman time, occupying these seats of teaching, right? The bishop at one point was the elder, the term bishop, priest, elder, comes from this, from the Jewish teaching style of the synagogue, where you had the elder, who was, an elder, like somebody who knew what they were talking about, knew they had prominence in the community, and his presence in a meeting meant that things were ready to get going on, and you had, and order was in session, and people could then carry on in their, act of, what would be considered worship, and where the whole assembly is there being directed by these elders, and that points back to Moses and Sinai and how they were splitting up the government at that time. You got people look at king of Israel and kings and kingships and kingdoms and stuff, and it's really not very prominent in the thought to understand that from the time of Moses to the time of Saul, there was no king, which would have been a couple hundred years. And that's where you get the book of Judges, right? And that's where these people just rise up and they have a bunch of authority and they rule over different parcels and have their different issues to work out and establish and fight wars and against whatever warring tribes and so forth. But there was no king. Yahovah, the God of Israel, was the king over Israel. He had set his people free out of Egypt so they didn't have to live under a king. And then the people come to Samuel, famously in 1 Samuel, and they go, Samuel, we want a king. And Samuel brings this to Yahovah, says, God, they want this king. And he's like, don't worry about it. They are rejecting me, not you. So the very desire to have a king is a rejection of Yahovah as king. And that's the point. That's the thing that's really important for people to understand. Christians and Jews alike that share this history. This, is that the God of Israel is the God of liberty, who liberates his people. It was for liberty that you have been liberated. It was for freedom you've been made free. Whoever the Son sets free is free indeed. And that is where, that's where my big argument about America, why America is important prophetically and spiritually on the human timetable, is that principle of liberty. Do they worship Libertas, the Greek god of liberty, or and which would be like libertine values and just debauchery, or do they worship Yehovah, the God of liberation, who sets people free from slavery and oppression? And Yeshua points to what the crux of the issue is with liberty. And this will tie back into the Satanism things, because Yeshua points out whoever sins, he says in John, whoever sins is a slave to sin. But whoever the Son sets free is free indeed. Well, how does he do that? Dying on the cross, forgiving everybody of their sins, right? Forgives you of your debt. The wrong that you committed, as any just system operates, when you commit wrong, you owe something back to society for the wrong that you've committed. You've committed murder, you've taken the life of somebody who's somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's child, somebody's daughter, somebody's husband, wife, whatever. When you commit murder, you've taken from the life of other people, and therefore your life then is demanded of you, whether it be your life or time or energy or whatnot. And that operates still to this day as a land that, in the United States of America, where we have our big issue is a law. How do we operate our laws? How do we enforce our laws? How do we establish our laws in this country in order to function as a society, as a people working together? Well, it's the teaching of Anton LaVey, which he gets from Aleister Crowley, that the whole of the law is to do what thou wilt and harm ye not, right? Well, here's the problem, is that let me tell you why that's where they get that from. Because they know. Here's the way that Satan and Satanism works. We have to understand who it is and what it is that Satan really is. And so, in order to get there, we're going to talk to Nikolas Schreck. Who knows if he still holds to these sentiments to this day. I'm not going to, hold his words against him now. I will extend the grace and mercy of Yehovah, our beloved Creator, who created us in His image and likeness. And I will extend that grace and mercy that comes from Him over our beloved Nikolas Schreck. But listen to what he has to say here in this interview. This is a great interview. It's a decent interview because the interviewer, Bob Larson, is a goon. He's just a goofball, he's just... he's in way over his head in this interview, and I think that's where Nikolas Schreck thinks that he's going to, get one over on him and make him look like such a fool by looking just so intelligent and really, reinforcing the ideas that you can see that are behind the way he approaches this. But I want you to hear what he has to say.
For anyone who wants to be a Satanist, we don't say welcome
The homeless,
to the
the handicapped, those with
I don't
multiple
care.
sclerosis
I don't
need not
want
apply.
the homeless, the handicapped.
The
That's
people
your
in
job.
Mother Teresa's home
You've
for the
take-
dying and the
you've take-
destitute, they need not apply.
I don't want them. You've taken that on your shoulders. That's your job. You're doing a great job with the homeless. You help everyone. We're helping those who help themselves, as it says in your Bible. And you can take the weak.
No, it doesn't say that in the Bible.
You can take the decrepit. You can take the...
I love as it says in your Bible. Well, it doesn't say that in the Bible. You just look like an absolute douchebag. But, anyways.
People who can't help themselves, we don't want them. It's simple. It's very simple.
The homeless you don't want to shelter?
No, I don't want to shelter people who can't take care of themselves. Why
You
can't
shelter
they?
The hungry, the
homeless,
starving,
and
you
you
don't
have
want to
more.
feed? Zeena, go ahead, Zeena. What were you saying?
That produces more of the same. There has to be some change. If you look at the animal kingdom, how is the animal kingdom able to survive? There is no such thing as homeless.
Back to social Darwinism again. In the animal kingdom, you preserve what is strong.
Hang on.
You give more food to the stronger animal.
Until humans
you don't
intervene
feed the
and start
weaker
killing
one.
the
I'm
animals.
trying to...
There's no welfare in
Nicholas,
the animal
I'm
world.
trying to remain as academically detached as I possibly
It's not
can.
an academically
but what you're
detached
saying
question.
is so absolutely disgustingly outrageous. Now,
And
just
to
wait,
me-
just wait a minute. Let me.
To you,
To me,
Zeena,
it's
Zeena,
disgustingly outrageous
Zeena.
that you would help these weak people who are draining our resources, who are causing so many problems. We could be doing positive things in the world.
Zeena, I want to ask
These
you.
weaklings are
What is
taking away all of our
well,
energy
that's-
and
that's-
resources. And you've decided to help them. That's disgusting to me.
You've never been to a refugee camp.
Why would I possibly want to go to a refugee camp?
Polite,
Look at
Zeena,
this. Let's see. I've got to go back a little further here.
I don't really believe that I would need to worry about walking down a dark alley and being followed by either of you
Absolutely
with
right.
a gun in your pocket. But what you have just said,
Here's, let me
let me finish.
present a
What
scenario
you
to
have just said, articulated to the masses, particularly in a dysfunctional society where people are filled with all types of anger and rage because of past abuses. What you're really doing, I think, is potentially lighting a fuse. I'm not worried that you're going to pull a gun out of your pocket and shoot me in front of these cameras,
what you're
but
saying
I
is
don't.
we take
But I don't know that somebody else might not do that
Okay,
because of
well-
what you said. You're
Okay,
not
let me-
willing to condemn
let me-
murder.
Let me answer your questions in 3 points. The masses. We have no regard for the masses. Satanism is a religion for the elite.
There it is.
It is a
Boom. Okay, we're going to go back 3 seconds.
We have no regard for the masses.
We have no regard for the masses.
Satanism is a religion for the elite.
Satanism.
It is a religion for leaders. It's a religion for competent people. It's not a religion for anyone who wants to be a Satanist. We don't say welcome
The homeless,
to the
the handicapped, those.
club.
So yeah, there you have it. Satanism, the religion of the elite, and so why Satanism? What? It's not like they only disbelieve the Christian God, but that's the thing, is that the very reality that they are tying themselves to these forms, these words, Satanism, that is implicitly and explicitly biblical, Judeo-Christian heritage. That's where it comes. We're talking about these words that are in Hebrew Bible, and we hear them today. And so why hang on to these things? And it has to do with just with the essence of the journey. This is like, I don't even think they understand this stuff. I don't think it's not like they went through the process of really thinking through, like, oh, we're Satanists. I think that it was, for them, it's all kind of like a game. It's all like a shock and awe deal, because they don't believe in any of these things. It's a game of mockery, and that's where you got to look at it less as, people have to learn to look at this less as this religion that believes some things, and they all adhere to these beliefs, and they all kind of orchestrate themselves that way. They instead need to look at it as a religion that stands against and is opposed to the religion, and therefore takes on religion for the sake of religion, and thus they are the thing that is that the New Testament is prescribing against. That human life, the human spirit, is designed as such to not be bound and tied to these rites and rituals in order to achieve some, spiritual enlightenment or whatever. But that, we are truly spiritually enlightened the more free we are to acknowledge what is the truth, the truth about who we are, and to acknowledge the outline of the nature in whose nature we were created. So so the idea where people are looking for all these things, they're looking for, when people say Satanism, Luciferianism, tying it to like magic traditions like Freemasonry and whatever, your Rosicrucians and all the Bill Cooper stuff. It's fine and good, but people are looking for all that stuff on the outside, and where they're hidden in plain sight, you're not allowed to really acknowledge them, because otherwise that's just coincidence. But when you have people's word, like this guy is the spokesperson for Satanism, what the Church of Satan is and represents, okay? And what he doesn't know or understand, I don't whether he is intentionally dishonest about this or not is irrelevant, because the whole principle behind what Satanism is opposed to what? Christianity. Well, what is it that Christianity is? Well, it's the belief that there is a God, and that God's name is Yahuwah, and that He sent a Son, His only begotten Son, whose name is Yeshua, to perform this act of forgiveness by offering His life in exchange for the lives of others, so that people could have a life filled with the rewards of knowing the truth and being free. And therefore, unbeknownst to these people who say like, oh, they're free, it's all about freedom, and like they're truly free people, and they're a different species. She'll go on in that interview to say that, oh, we're a different species because of the things that we choose to do and say and so forth, and believers in God and Christ or whatever are different species. It's all a lot of abstract. These are spiritual things You can't acknowledge that they're spiritual because they landlock the discussion to be like, no, it's just like this. You people are a bunch of idiots. We're elites and know what we're doing and talking about, even though they don't. They don't even know. Like, you are intrinsically tying yourself to the Christian tradition and saying, as a way of saying that, there's an end to it. Those things are coming to an end. We're going into the age of Satanism, which he also says in that interview. Thousands of Satanists are going to come up in the 90s, and it's going to be this huge movement. There are, there have been a lot of Satanists, but still a marginally very, very small group of people. And they really target very ignorant people that have like a tenuous knowledge of Christianity, and most of what they know from Christianity and the theology of the New Testament, they get from their local pastor people who have a certain idea about things, and as long as they can answer the arguments of their pastors, of their aunts and cousins and other family members, they found God and they get saved, and now they can quote all these Bible scriptures and be like, yeah, you gotta save yourself from hell, buddy, you better get baptized, do. And they'll have all kinds of interesting theological arguments and debates in order to, because they're trying to save their family, right? They're trying to save their family from hell. And so there's a lot of strength that people derive from Satanism and hanging on to this imagery and magic words, and that's the magic of it, right? That's where the magic comes in. Why magic? Why are they just not like carte blanche atheists? Why isn't it enough just to be like, I just don't believe this stuff, right? Why is that not enough? Why do we have to be like, oh, we're Satanists? Because they believe in the power of these forms, right? There's a verse in the Bible says that they acknowledge the form but deny the power. They take a form of godliness and deny the power. And so that's where I say, Satanism is religion for religion's sake. They don't believe that there's all these forces. They are the force. They are the God. They are God enforcing their rule and authority over earth by shocking you and scaring you into being afraid of them and giving them power, and that's what makes them elite. Not because they actually know anything or understand anything or have any more knowledge than anybody else, but just because by virtue of the fact that they can scare you. My camera's just not able to hang right now. Their power comes from the fact that they can just scare you into giving them power, and that's what makes them elite. Not that they have any actually real power. All they know is that they have the power to just scare you and frighten you and make you look over here, and that's what makes you sheep. And in that sense, that's where they're winning the war, is by we as sheep caving to the power of their fear and not really being able to recognize like where their power really lies, and that comes from where you are putting your energy. You're not able to see or recognize how they're behind, your food industry. You're not able to see or recognize how they work in the darkness and deceit. That they're deceivers. Like their God is deceit. In the beginning, like you are of your father. Yeshua said to the Pharisees, "As you are of your father, the devil." The world's first Satanists really are the people who were the enemies and the accuser of the chosen one of Israel, right? And it says you are of your father, the devil, the diabolos. Like Tim Mackie pointed out, the Gospels. It's just like, how are we going to get this guy? We're going to kill this guy. We got to figure out a way to take him out. Your father, the devil, who was a liar from the beginning. And that's, Satanism, by pulling on Satanism, by attributing yourself like, oh, I'm a Satanist, what you're saying is you are of the tradition that uses the lies in order to divide and conquer and to rule over others and enslave them. And thus, in your sin, you are a slave then to sin. You are a slave to always functioning on that level, always having to come up with another deceit, always having to come up with another story, always having to come up with another angle, another way of of striving for more power. You've always got to, you can do whatever you want, and that's they always say, like, Satan sells you just enough of the truth to feed you a lie. Every amount of lie has just enough of the truth in it for you to believe it. People wouldn't believe it unless it had some semblance of truth in it. Some pattern they could recognize in what they're hearing in order to say, oh, that's the truth. And so then they accept all the other lies that come along with it, right? And so then it becomes a trick of blackmail. Even blackmail, oh, you bought this lie. Now you have to defend that lie to the very end. Because after all, you compromised on your conscience and something. There's no room for remorse or regret or repentance at all. You just have to bury yourself deeper in whatever amount of deceit in order to sustain this lifestyle, this way of being. And so you'll say anything, you'll be anything, you'll go up. You don't care. You can say, oh yeah, dude, I'm a Christian. You can be like, that's where a lot of Satanists become pastors of churches. I mean, there's all kinds of testimony out there of people that come out of the world. You want to know about satanic abuse, then listen to people who have been victims of satanic abuse. You're not going to get to the bottom of satanic abuse by just dismissing everybody who says that they're victims of satanic abuse out of the box. I mean, and that's that whole hypocrisy issue we're all facing right now. Is like, okay, you can say believe all women, but unless they bring up complaints against Satanism and the Church of Satan and satanic abuse, then it's, oh, we can't believe those people. They're trying to bring a problem against Satanism, which could only always be good, right? I mean, they're Satanists. Like, they wouldn't, sacrifice people. Like, come on, they're Satanists. Satanism, that's not even real, is it? A lot of people will dismiss it, like, out of hand. Like, oh, there's Satanism, Satanists. That's what they say about Christians. Their God. Like, God, Christians? What's a Christian? People believe this? Oh, my God. Blah, blah, blah. They don't understand how the whole thing works. They don't understand that Satanism, it's not about Satan, it's not about worshiping Satan. Yeah, there's a couple of them. But Anton LaVeyan Satanism has nothing to do with worshiping some guy in a red costume and has horns and a tail. That's not Satanism. Satanism is, it's atheism, but with all the fringe benefits of esoteric occult knowledge and utilizing forms, ritual, in order to conjure a response out of other people. It's the same like why liturgical worship is so effective, as you're seeing in this screen, is because that's what being spiritual being is like the most definite article of evidence that suggests that we are spiritual beings, is that we're so affected by forms of ritual, senses, sights, sounds, that they conjure ideas that we're able to associate and bring them and take them to heart. You sing the songs because as you sing the songs and they become a part of you, you associate your ideas with sentiments and feelings, and that then turns into an action in the lifestyle and the way that you approach your life. That's why I do music. That's what music is to me, is because I'm taking the power that there is in the sounds and sights of music and imagery in order to conjure ideas that I think are good ideas for me and for other people, which everybody's doing, but so when people will say, a big reason why I wanted to go over this is because I was watching this whole thing with this Satan guy or whatever, I don't know, something X, Nas X, and the whole music video, and this whole, everybody wants to talk about it and everything, but people are like, oh, I heard a talk show host say the other day, like, I don't think he's like a Satanist, because why would you, first of all, who is going to go out of their way to conjure the image and name and likeness of the manifestation in imagery, what is the spiritual being of Satan and all the ideas that come with it, of being an enemy, of being just against, of being a prosecutor, accuser that's always bringing a case against you, pointing their finger at you, and you better conform, you better bet, you better. That's what that whole music video is to me. Is this guy who's totally caving on his conscience and wants to be like, sure, I will do anything for Satan, just to get a dime, I guess. I mean, whatever. But that is the essence of Satanism. It's not this, I believe in Satan and I think he's a good guy and God's actually the bad guy. Like Eddie Murphy quotes Sammy Davis Jr. as saying that, Satan's actually a good guy, dude. He has more power over God and stuff. And while there are all those people, you don't need to hold those kinds of beliefs. It's just the forms. The forms of, I'm going to take action and make choices that are going to be deceptive, and I'm going to use that deception in order to create more deception, and I'm going to use that deception in order to create more deceivers who will create more deception, so that I will have more power, people will be more divided and weaker, and they will be more subject to what I want them to do and say and be. Because I want the world to be a certain way, and if it isn't, I'm going to make it be that way. And I will beg, borrow, and steal in order to make that happen. I will kill, I will slander, I will do anything in order to get more power. And that's where all these things kind of come into line. The elitism, why Satanism is the original religion of the elites, on their own confession. The dude says, Satanism is a religion for the elite. Therefore, why are we so easy to excuse the elite for some common, some common sentiment that we have that no, nobody can ever actually be a Satanist. No, they actively go after Satan, the people with talent. They talk about in that interview, and it's also been in others where why, you see Anton LaVey with John Kerry back in the day, having a relationship with Marilyn Monroe. Sammy Davis Jr. and all these prominent people. It's the same thing with Church of Scientology, who go after celebrities in order to legitimize, what they're doing. Because it's about control. It's about power. It's about a few people getting a hair and deciding hey, this is a pretty good scam. I think this is going to work out for us. We should do this. We should do that. And in order to set ourselves up, we'll be sitting pretty at the expense of everybody else, giving everybody else the finger, right? Well, why is that a problem, right? Why is that bad? Are they bad people? At the end of the day, isn't it just kind of silly, this God thing? I talked to, there was a friend I spoke to recently, and he was like, why can't we just grow up when it comes to the Bible and believing in God and believing in Jesus? Sometimes grow up, right? And I understand what he's saying. The problem is what truly is the way? When Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," the Father says, "Through me." What is it he's trying to say there? What is it that makes him the way? What is the thing that makes him the life? Is it because he said so in the Bible? And he did some really awesome things? Or is he trying to tell us who he really is? Is he trying to tell us, if you want to think about me, don't think about, a Jewish first century man who was a builder and grew up in a tense political environment. I think he's saying that when you think of me, think of what is the way to life and truth, the way, the truth, and the life. What makes him the way? What makes him the way is that there's only one way to go, and that's just to be who you are. And who you are is, so that's why you see later in John chapter 17 how he outlines this big theological map of who he is and who we are. Father, I pray that they may be one, even as we are one. I As you are in me, I in them, they in us. One. And that's pulling directly from the Shema. Shema Israel, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad. Yehovah Elohim, Yehovah Echad. Hear, O Israel, hear and obey, O Israel. I am that I am, who was, who is, who shall be. Hear, O one who wrestles with God, who's trying to figure God out. Hear and obey, one who hears and obeys. Hear and obey, I am, who was, who is, who shall be. The Almighty, Elohim, who's the mighty authority, ruler, creator of the heavens and the earth. Who was, who is, who shall be. Echad, a one bundle of grapes. It's called a bundle of grapes. Echad, one bundle of grapes. The density of these of pockets of information, the whole thing comes together, and the vine that branches out into these grapes and becomes fruit. That is Yehovah Echad. Yehovah Elohim is the one who branches out and becomes dynamic, interfaces with the reality that he creates. And we have that power. And so that's where, Satanism is drawing on that truth and then tries to get the corner on the market on that. And then turn around and accuse the market giver, the one who has the capital. The one who has the capital on who you are and what you're capable of as a free divine being with the powers of all the creation of the universe, to choose one way or another, to choose life or death. They're going to say, oh, we've got the corner on that market, and you are a scumbag, if you don't do things our way and see things our way, and even though, we got our name from you guys. The reason we are Satanists is because there's this Satan is a Bible character in the Bible of Christians. They don't say that they're, whatever Hindu devil, that cult or whatever. They're distinctly against the Western cult because that's their, that's their cultural environment. That's where they come up. That's what they grow up in. That's where they're birthed out of. It's just an antithesis to the thesis of what is Western Christianity. And it's hard to hold too much against them because of how much Western Christianity has been distorted and in the power that has animated Western Christianity in the modern age. So what do we got there? Bulls are just cows on ketamine. Right? You could say that. Or you could say that bulls are male heifers. What would be what's the proper nomenclature for that? Steel Pantera, thanks for the comment. And stopping by here on Twitch. Kind of making my way around here. So if we're going to recognize Satanism for what it really is, we have to look in the right places. Just like we have to recognize, like, we're going to believe Satanism, we have to know where it comes from. And if we're going to know where it comes from, we got to understand Christianity's thesis. What is the thesis to the antithesis? Is it really Christianity? Is it really the teachings of the New Testament? Is it really is it really an antithesis to the Gospels? Or is it an antithesis to something else? And I would argue that it's kind of both. On the one hand, it's the antithesis to the Gospels, because, whatever it is the Gospels are going to posit to them, by and large, people are not really happy with what they end up with. 21st century, 20th century, where with birth. By and large, whatever the real underlying thing is behind Christianity, even if everybody has it wrong here today, all the churches are wrong. Everything about it is just wrong. What we do have, good or bad, is not worth it enough to these people to, find something that they want to group themselves in. Which is fine. Free choice, right? I'm not a Calvinist. They have the freedom to choose, what they're going to be a part of. What they don't have the freedom in is the truth about what the teaching is, and that's the thing that's of ongoing debate within Christian circles, right? What is the power that the gospel has over? Satanism is that's the thing that's of ongoing debate. What I would say, where the win is and where the loss is that Satanism and Luciferianism and magic and stuff, what it fails to understand is the universal oneness of who the God of the New Testament is. And they do that because they miss it, and that they do that because they largely inherit what is a huge misunderstanding about what the New Testament teaches. Pastors have inherited their own lies, and that is largely what generated the antithesis. So people don't understand the gospel, they don't know how to communicate it, they don't know how to transmit it on down to the next generation. They don't understand the teachings of Yeshua, Mashiach, and the apostles who sent them. And because they haven't understand that, after 2,000 years, became the telephone, well, then you end up with Satan. However, Satanism holds on to its own line of tradition, which has intentionally set itself up in opposition to what the gospel is teaching, and that's a tricky one right there. Magicism comes largely from this thread of ritual that has kind of existed always under the surface of common consciousness of collective consciousness. But that's where there's this really awesome interview. Maybe I can dig it up here. The people that dealt with the European Order of the Golden Dawn, I think they've really shifted their weight. See, yeah, they're like getting to come up. Here we go. Leo Zagami, yeah, here it is. Nice. in this interview, they do a really good breakdown of this stuff. Might as well just watch it. Oh, look at that. Most recent comment is mine from 3 years ago. Energy is indecent. Yeah, I like that reply. Here was my comment. All art is ritual and iconographic. There really is not a line. Energy is induced and transmitted, and images are conjured so as to invoke invisible imaginations. That is the mechanics of art. So the Satanists are right in saying that it is art, and it is, because they make a big deal. It's just a lot of theater, no big deal. Don't worry about it. We're just a bunch of artists, thespians, putting on a big ornate display in order to be like, isn't this ridiculous? Isn't religion ridiculous? Look at our play. They really just make themselves.